Okay, hi everybody. How are you all? Good. Good. Am I all right to start? My name is Jay Center. I am the publisher of the Shawnee Mission Post. The little descriptor in our program said that we are in small town Kansas, which I suppose is technically true, but we're basically in the Kansas City metro area, although all the little towns we cover are very tiny. Just to give you a little frame of reference, this somewhat dark square here represents our current coverage area. So downtown Kansas City is right there. Kansas City proper is kind of all there. The state line runs through the middle of the metro area, which causes all sorts of interesting issues, but we focus just on the Kansas side, a very particular pocket of the Kansas City metro area in Johnson County, Kansas. So when we launched, I launched the site in June of 2010 as the Prairie Village Post. Prairie Village is the city of about 21,000 people that's right here. There are two little itty-bitty cities right up there called Fairway and Mission Hills that have about 3,000 each, and then we have another little part of a city called Leawood down there. So we're only covering an area of about 35,000 people those first 2.5 years that we had the site going. But basically we found that we couldn't there weren't enough businesses in that coverage area to sustain an operation. I had a full-time job my first 3.5 years of doing the site. I was working in the communications department of a hospital. But I had a partner come on in 2012, and when he came on, we'd started to get enough traction that all the people in these little cities up here, Mission Woods, Roland Park, there's like 14 little itty-bitty cities in our coverage area. But they had started to say, hey, the Kansas City Star's not covering us anymore either. We'd really appreciate somebody coming out doing it. So Dan, with my partner Dan and I, with my partner Dan on board, we were able to kind of fully fill out this area, kind of bordered by a couple of big highways that hangs together. So by 2015, our coverage area had expanded about 80,000 people. As of the last 2 months or so, we now covered all of this area, and it's basically the footprint of a school district. Last year, we changed the name of the site from the Prairie Village Post, since we'd started to tack on all these other cities, to the Shawnee Mission Post. Shawnee Mission is the name of the school district in the area, and it's like public education as a religion to those of us who grew up in the Johnson County part of Kansas City. So we kind of discovered that the school district was a good organizing principle for us there. Just sort of a dispassionate look at the figures here. This is total visits to the site over the first 6 years. This is through 3 quarters of 2017. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. Stop going by. Not amazing display issues. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So, 2016, we were up to. No, it's one or the other. 2016, we were up to 1.5 million visits to the site each for the year. This year, we're on track to come in just about at that number, maybe a little below, and I'll kind of get into some of the things that might be behind that in a minute here. But the reason you all are here is because you want to hear about why we moved to the paywall revenue model. So, in about 2015, this is total revenue for our site by year. So, we were seeing steady growth in revenue over the first 4 or 5 years, but it wasn't anything, when you're not topping $100,000, it's hard to keep people on staff. Dan and I, as the owners, were kind of able to pay ourselves something close to a living wage, in 2013 and 2014. But in 2015, we sort of started to say to ourselves, listen, Dan had been a newspaper publisher for 30 years, sort of seeing the size of the market that we were in and kind of his experience with what you would, assume you would be able to generate in terms of ad sales. It just wasn't there for a web-only product. We didn't feel like we could raise rates much higher. We had a professional salesperson who worked for the Star for 17 years and done a lot of big accounts with them. We just couldn't kind of crack that code to get to be able to generate between $15,000 and $20,000 a month in revenue, which was kind of what we felt like we needed to do to have a sustainable operation. So in 2015, we realized, all right, we got to start thinking outside of just advertising. I mean, we'd done sponsored content, all sort of shapes and sizes of display advertising, a lot of interactive advertising, all that kind of stuff. But we said, okay, we're going to have to find a different revenue source. So in 2015, we did a donation campaign, and in September, went to our readers and said, listen, if you like what we do and you want to make sure that we're here for years to come to provide you this coverage that nobody else is providing, we're asking you to make a donation. If you make a donation, hey, you get a cool Prairie Village Post t-shirt. It's great. So we had absolutely no idea what to expect. We ended up getting about, I think it was like 275 people actually made donations. We capped the amount you could donate at $200. So you could donate between $10 and $200. You got little gifts at different levels. So we made, and we kept it open for a month. So we made just shy of $15,000, $14,500 for that first donation campaign year. And again, we didn't have any idea what to expect, and that was helpful money for us at the time. We had myself, Dan, and a full-time salesperson on staff by that point. But it's not a game changer. I mean, that's a nice cushion for a few months or whatever, but it's not enough to fully staff the thing so that we're able to produce what we want to do. So when we realized that, okay, that donation campaign alone is not going to be enough to it's not going to be a real revenue stream that's going to get us to the next level, we decided, okay, we got two choices. We can charge people, make them pay to get access to the site, or we can expand. We can launch a second site, and with that scale, hopefully be able to bring on some of the bigger advertisers that we hadn't been able to land accounts with, big grocery chains, car dealerships, things like that. So we launched a second site in an area just south of the Shawnee Mission area called Blue Valley. Again, organized it around a school district. Went out and tried to get founding sponsors, people to basically commit to a package of advertising that they could use over a 2-year period. But they needed to pay us $5,000 up front. We were trying to raise $50,000 to kind of pay for the reporter to get Blue Valley up and running off there. So we ended up getting, I think, 8 founding sponsors on, and that was literally the number we were that's our go or no go point, and just felt like, all right, that it would be really, really risky to proceed with that. We'd hired a full-time reporter to staff that site. We'd hired a full-time sports reporter to kind of cover all of the prep sports in the county, which we thought would be another way to bring in some advertisers that we hadn't had before. It also happened to be a really big political year in Kansas, which I won't bore you with, but they were very competitive state house races. And so political advertising in 2016 was great. We re-upped our donation campaign, and I think we got close to 375 people, actually made donations. But, even with, with revenue from 2 websites, our founding sponsors, and our donation campaign, we still didn't top $200,000.
Jay, not to cut you off, but
yeah, please.
The $5,000 initial upfront from your founding sponsors, was that an annual agreement that they would pay $5,000, or was it a 6-month agreement?
So the idea was, okay, here's a basket of ads that you can use anytime over the next 2 years, ads and sponsored posts.
Okay.
So if you want to sit on it for 1.5 years until we've got a lot more traffic, great. If you want to use it all now, up to you. I mean, we the value of that ad package was close to $8,000 or $9,000.
And I guess that was to appease the objection, well, you don't have any readers.
Yep, exactly. So we're just trying to get people in the door. And it's that Blue Valley area is quite affluent. There should not have been an issue getting big people on board. And we had a lot of prominent community members sort of pushing people to get behind us. And honestly, I think if we'd gotten one more, we probably would have gone for it. I'm glad we didn't in hindsight. But, so in the 2016 rolls around, I've got full-time sales director, me, a full-time sports reporter, a full-time editor for the second site, and then Dan, my partner, is working part-time. at this point. So we had 5 staff members. All the financial cushion that we had was totally eaten up. Sort of like wringing every bit of juice that we could out of an ad only and sort of like voluntary donation model. We still couldn't cross 200,000. And at that point, the scale of the business was such that we were going to really have to staff it up at a level that really we would have needed like $300,000 or $350,000 to make it work. So, Dan and I sort of like look at our navels for 3 weeks and say, all right, like we've got to roll the dice here. I mean, we've got to either the community is going to be willing to invest in us, and we'll get enough people to pay subscriptions, or it's going to be time to move on. My wife Julia here is in the audience. We were, talking about when we were going to put our house on the market, stuff like that. So we were not particularly bullish about the idea that the paywall would work. I was sort of like, in my best moments, I thought it was probably 50-50, something like that. But so at the end of March, by the end of March, we'd had to let everybody go. It was just down to me full time, basically. Dan retired this year, so he was kind of working part time, not all that involved. So when we had to close down the second site. So we're down to our initial site. I'm the only person on staff. Traffic's kicking along pretty much the same. In fact, I'll show you in a second. Quite good for those first 3 months. Hold on real quick here. So in March, we put up a post and say, listen, in April, we're going to start charging for full access to the site. We had gone through, done research on a bunch of different paywall providers. For a few reasons, I got it down to 2 that I was really looking at. One was called Leaky Paywall. The other is called Pigeon Paywall. Leaky Paywall, as the name suggests, isn't really locked down. I mean, you get annoyed because you're going to run into the paywall, but you can very easily get around it. But the setup costs were virtually nothing. I don't think that there was an ongoing, they didn't take a cut kind of a thing, or if they did take a cut, it was very minimal. And they had a couple other features that were interesting, but it didn't seem like they were very heavily resourced. Pigeon Paywall, which is run by this company called Sabra Media. Setup fee, I believe, is like $1,500 up front. At the time, they were charging $100 a month for a flat fee, and then they get 10% of all proceeds from the paywall itself. So it was definitely a much more expensive option, but its functionality in terms of kind of what parameters you can set up about who gets access to what when was very, very powerful. And it also has a number of things sort of built into it that make it harder to get around. So you can't just delete your cookies, you can't just use an incognito window. It's not impossible to get around it, but you will be spending more time and energy getting around it than the $6 a month should be worth to you. We batted around a bunch of different pricing ideas. Initially, I was pretty convinced that we wanted to go with a super low level pricing scheme and just try to get conversion from as many readers as we possibly could. We were doing 60 to 70,000 uniques a month at that point. So we, the idea was sort of well, listen, if we can get 10,000 households or something like that to kick in $1.99 a month or $2.99 a month, it should be a no-brainer. It'll be a great revenue stream for us, all this kind of stuff. For a number of reasons, I ended up coming to the conclusion that it was a much better idea to start the price point higher. One, the norm has been for the past 20 years that you go online and things are free, and so sort of the initial reaction to the idea that you're going to have to pay for something is no, and so your total conversion rate, no matter what the case study suggests, at the very best is 3 or 4%. It's probably closer to 1 or 2%, and doubling that sort of initial price that I had in mind is not a deal breaker for most households in our area. I mean, there's talking down the hall about this. I mean, we did get, when we announced Paywall was going up, we got a number of senior citizens who were on fixed incomes who said, listen, I literally do not have $6 in my budget that I can dedicate to it, but I go to the site every day. Is there anything you can do? And, like, we kind of work with people on those instances or whatever. But most of our readers are, kind of like prime of their careers, kids in elementary and high school, pretty affluent area. So the idea that there's not $6 a month in the family budget for a household subscription. Subscriptions are good on up to 5 devices at a time. So it's sort of like the idea is the husband and the wife sort of share one account. So we ended up coming to the conclusion that pricing should be like $5 or $6 a month. So we put up a post in April saying, hey, freeloaders, if you guys.
But I cannot believe that has 0 comments on it.
No, it had tons of comments. There's something up with it. So I did not. Okay, so the comments on the site itself were actually pretty supportive. Like we had this guy was a total troll, like, which I'll get into in a second. But like by and large, like most of the people were saying like, hey, I'm happy to pay. I'll pay for this. The star's not covering it anymore. Sign it up. Here's a guy. I sympathize with your dilemma, but I don't find it compelling enough to pay for. That's fine. But like we had a lot of our fans like kind of coming out of the woodwork, so we didn't, this wasn't prompted or anything. Like on the site itself, comments were super positive. When we posted the link to that story on Facebook, though, it was just like the dregs of humanity and beating us over the head.
Yeah.
It was awful. And I mean, like, hit in my stomach, like, oh, this is going down. We are going down in flames. This is going to be an abject failure. Like, I will leave in the dark of night out of embarrassment. Exactly, yeah. So, but I mean, these are our, for whatever reason, on the site itself, our buddies really came out and said, great. So we announced that in March 15th, and we kind of gave some preliminary pricing stuff. 2 more times before the actual launch, we sort of did some more like, hey, here's the frequently asked questions we're getting. Which I don't bring that up. And then April 12th, we flipped it on. So because we decided you're going to get 3 page views for free per month, had done a pretty detailed analysis of where our traffic was coming, and realized, okay, we should be able to keep like the vast majority of our traffic if we let those sort of light users come on 3-4 times a month, but those super users who are on 3 or 4 times a day, which are generating a ton of page views, we want, they need to be paying, but like, let's try to keep as much traffic as possible. But so, turned it on April 12th, nobody hits the paywall for the first day or 2. But by the end of the week, we'd had like 200 subscriptions come in. And most of those initial subscriptions were people paying the full $65 for the full year. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, like we'll at least survive, through the month or whatever. Like this is good. By the end of the second week, we were up to closer to like 350 or 400 subscriptions. And in fact, I'll show you kind of here how this works.
This is Pigeon Paywall?
This is Pigeon Paywall. God, this is not very...
Show us all the cards, Jay.
What's that?
Don't show all the cards, man.
I'm here to open the kimono, my friend. So this shows revenue per month. So again, we have half of April, and these are the monthly totals since. So we had $17,000 come in the first 2.5 weeks from the paywall. And if you remember, we did like $17,900 from voluntary subscriptions the year before. A lot of those were recurring. Probably like 2/3 of the initial subscriptions were, here's all the money for the year, you get a little bit of discount for it. But the other third was people who were committed to, recurring charges on their card of $595 a month. The next month we did another $7,000. I mean, in my initial budgeting, I had no idea what to expect, but I sort of said like, maybe we'll do $10,000 the first month, $5,000 the second month, and then it'll drop down to $3,000 or $2,000 a month after that. In sort of our looking at the financials, we basically, Julia and I basically decided, like, listen, if we get to 1,000 total subscribers within a calendar year, so by April 2018, we should be in a position where we can at least keep doing it. As a mom and pop business, we may not be in like super growth mode, but like it'll make sense to us to keep doing it probably. But we got to that 1,000 mark in 3.5 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was very quite edifying. We haven't dropped below. We didn't drop below $5,000 a month until last month, and then that's through I think October 23rd or something, or maybe that's through today. But we're up back over $5,000 a month in revenue from the paywall this month. And so this is the dashboard you get with Pigeon. So it shows you, these are individual subscribers. We did a deal 3 weeks ago where you get your first 2 months for 99 cents a month, and then you're in after that. So they're gonna have to cancel if they don't want to turn into real subscribers. And then it shows you your monthly revenue. But that dashboard doesn't take into account group subscriptions. So we cut deals to city halls and like the 14 little municipalities that we cover, where they get basically like a 30% discount on their subscriptions. So they give us a list of emails, we enter them manually, and we do the charging offline. So, with the group subscriptions in, as of today, our total subscriptions is up to $13.45. So I have no idea, I still don't have any idea what to expect. Readership has been consistent in terms of unique visits. So we've not had like some mass exodus of people who have said, like, this just absolutely infuriates me that I encounter this paywall. Generally speaking, what seems to be happening is people are reading until they hit the paywall, and then they are stopping. They sort of have like gotten trained at this point that like, oh yeah, if I click on that link, I'm gonna get the paywall, and so they don't click it anymore. But total traffic, sorry, I'm gonna show this real quick. Okay, so this is then I apologize, I was hoping to have a much prettier set of slides for you all, but it will happen to me. So this is the whole history of the site in terms of traffic. So this is January, February, March of this year. We did, like 3 consistent months that were like way, way, way above average for us. We had a lot of weird stuff going on. The superintendent of our school district had sort of like pissed everybody, every constituency he had pissed off by that point. And so like he was getting run out of town. And so there's just story after story after story about like what's going on with this guy, and then he resigned. And so like over 3 months, we just had this like flood of school news that like produced a ton of traffic. So that was, those numbers were out of the ordinary. That 134 was the month that the paywall went live. But as you can see, like we are down more into the range of what we were doing in 2015. I think, and this is total guessing, I have no idea if this is actually what's going on or not. Those first few months, people kept clicking. They hadn't realized they were going to hit the paywall all the time. And so, they click, they go to the site, the page still loads, the ads still show, but they just don't get to see the content. Now I think they're pretty well trained that, okay, by the 15th of the month, I've probably used up my 3 things, and so I'm just not even going to bother clicking anymore. And I think the reason I think that is because our unique numbers are still the same, right? So we're still getting that 65,000 uniques a month, but the total sessions is down. Mm-hmm. So,
Jay, these are sessions, not page views?
These are sessions, yep. These are sessions, yep. Page views is 200-ish, something like that, on average a month.
How did it affect the page views?
Oddly, it doesn't seem to affect page views as much as sessions.
Okay.
And I think that I have the feeling that it's because the subscribers are the ones who are generating so many of the page views to begin with. Are the super users who are coming 3 or 4 times a day anyway.
Any pushback from sponsors that you did this?
So in March, when before we made the announcement, we told all our sponsors, okay, we're putting up this paywall. We've calibrated it so that we're going to maintain as much traffic and exposure for you guys as humanly possible. But what we will do is we had raised rates a lot from 2016 to 2017 because total traffic had gone up a ton in 2016. So we said, listen, we're going to cut rates back down to our 2016 rates until we see what happens. And, if traffic goes way back up to like what we were doing in 2016, we'll, restore rates way up to those high levels that you're paying now. If it seems like it's tailed off a little, we may adjust it. And so basically after 3 months, we said, there hasn't been a super substantial decrease, but it looks like we're off about 10%, perhaps. We're going to reduce rates a little bit from what we were doing at the beginning of this year. I haven't had anybody push back in a significant way and say, nope, I'm not doing it anymore. We have the people who ask, as you would probably imagine, are the people who have an actual marketing department, or they've got an agency that's doing their buy.
Right.
And so they're pretty savvy, and they want to know, well, is this impacting my total exposure for the month? But even the people who have like a dedicated like stats person who's just supposed to look at how their ads are performing for their clients every month, we send them the report. I've never had any like, this is pretty scary. Yeah.
Are you selling the ads on impressions, or they run a site?
It's run a site. So we do, basically we say, listen guys, our big ad, what is it right now? What do we charge right now? $6.75. So our billboard ad at the very top of the page is $6.75. And that's $6.75 whether it's the best traffic month in history or a kind of middling one. But that's always, I don't know, we've never had any problems with, where'd all my stuff go? We've never had any problems with that approach.
Do you sell? Do you allow more than one vendor to use an ad spot?
No. So we do, well, that big billboard ad that we have at the top, we'll sell it up to 3 people.
It shuffles upon page review.
Yeah, you get 33% of page views for the big ones.
But you each pay $6.75 if you sold all 3.
Correct. Yep.
And regardless of how many impressions, they get a third of them.
Yep. Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yep. So the last, and unfortunately I closed the window. So like a month after we pushed the paywall live, have you guys heard of Stratechery? Has anybody come across that site?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Ben Thompson, who oddly Julia and I went to college with, he was on our college newspaper with us in like 1998. But he's this like, he runs his own subscription site. He just writes about the tech industry. So in May, he published this article called "The Business of the News Industry," which I would highly recommend to everybody who's interested in paywalls reads. But basically, he goes through and says that really the only place where subscriptions for news is going to work really well is at the local level. and I mean, it just sort of like crystallized my thinking on the state of affairs. That basically these people, the people in your communities, if you've been up and running for a few years, probably recognize that you really are the only people providing the kind of content that they've come to rely on. And that if you can message to them that when you're subscribing, you're not paying for a particular article, you're paying me to continue to go out and do this reporting that benefits your community, you should be in pretty good shape. And I really embrace that view because in the months and weeks after the paywall went live, I realized that I turned into just a total flim-flam for traffic. Like that was all that mattered, right? Because that's what gets monetized. And so if I could spend 15 minutes putting up pictures of weird birds that somebody sent me, and that got me more traffic than like making the 3 calls to do. Making the 3 calls that like would have turned into a real interesting story. Like I would do that. But when we pushed up the paywall 1, I would get this like uneasy feeling anytime I was going to put up clickbaity stuff because it was like, people are paying for this. And then when I realized that when we put up like accountability posts, I would see 4 or 5 subscriptions come in right away. And there was like,
what's an accountability post?
but like an accountability journalism. Hey, the school board just approved spending $25 million on this thing, and they didn't put it out to bid. Like,
And it's not
what's up there?
even that people are reading it necessarily. Those stories aren't necessarily
Yeah.
getting
They
read.
still don't. All those accountability stories do not get more page views or anything like that than ever before. But it just there's a clear correlation between the days we publish like hard-hitting journalism stuff, 4 or 5 subscriptions come in. Days that we're doing trafficy stuff, no new subscriptions come in. So it totally reorients your relationship to your audience.
So for people who are subscribing, you get a sense that they're expecting more now from you?
No. I think we've been up for 7 years, so there was a pretty like established track record. We also worked in those posts where we announced things to communicate to people like, coverage is not going to change a lot. There's still going to be ads on the site. There's still going to be sponsored posts on the site. Basically, we're just trying to figure out how to make this sustainable so that we can keep doing it, for the next whatever years.
What's the site called?
Shawnee Mission Post. So ShawneeMissionPost.com. That's how you get there. Yeah, Scott.
So, does it at all concern you? Because I think it's an interesting paradox that people are willing to pay you for articles that you are reading.
If traffic were not where it is, if traffic had dropped off a whole lot, I would be more concerned about it. But I do think, like, in terms of reach, I feel very confident I can sit down across the table with many advertisers and say, like, listen, guys, like, we're still the only game in town, even if total sessions is off a little bit. But I mean, like, we did all these candidate forums for like 5 of the little cities that we covered. City council people for a city of 3,500 or whatever. Like, nobody else is like hosting that kind of stuff. And so when we post videos to those forums, again, we'd see 3 or 4 subscriptions come in.
But are you asking about native
Well,
pays?
what I'm saying is that, so the old system that rewards the picture of the bird,
Yeah.
your bird, that was like your economic incentive. Now you have your own set of morals and values, but if you were to look purely at economic incentives, you're saying that clickbaity things are bad because it's it's empty calories.
Yeah.
Now on the other hand, if you notice subscriptions for articles that people don't read, that they agree with philosophically,
Yeah.
do those kind of economic incentives, does that eventually lead, like right now it looks good, but is there a danger of eventually that leading you in a
So like,
not as good?
there is a political faction who wants me to write about the pilfering of taxpayer money, and I noticed that when I like rake public officials over the coal for, paying for stormwater improvements or whatever, like I get 4 of those, so I'm just gonna like go out of my way to like beat them up. I think maybe that's possible. I mean, we live in it's a very moderate pocket of Kansas. Like Kansas is a super, super conservative, like red state. But inside the 435 loop, it's like pretty much purple, like 50-50. And they're the biggest political coalition in our area is like the moderate political coalition. So, we've got fairly far left people and fairly far right people who are like always chipping at us for stuff. But
Has anybody gone to you and said, I'm a subscriber, I didn't like this article, I'm canceling?
yes. Yes. And I mean, like, I just like any newspaper. And I think the first couple times that happened, I was like, it's over. But like Dan always told, like Dan, like there's a lot of misery in the world. People want to get pissed off about something, and it's like so be it. Like there's $5.95 out of my pocket. Like it's not the end of the world.
So to piggyback on what Scott just asked, can you talk about the change in the conversation with your readers? pre-paywall and post-paywall? What discussions were you having, if any, before the paywall, and what did you start hearing from your readers after?
Well, I mean, I think our user experience was pretty awful in the months before we launched the paywall because we were selling every pixel that we had, right? I mean, I used like a text bar at the top that would stick when you'd scroll. I would use a pop-up. I mean, I was selling 2 or 3 sponsored posts a day instead. You know, we've limited it to 1 now that we've got now that we've got the paywall live. I would hear.
And that native content does not go behind the paywall. It stays.
No, native content's open to anybody. Yeah. So if I heard anything other than like, boy, I'm glad you're covering, it was like, God, this sucks because I can't like, you know, on my browser it's hard for me to close the pop-up kind of stuff or whatever. So like when the paywall went live, well, okay, so here's the other thing. That this is like the unintended benefit of the paywall is like, most of our trolls are like very conservative people who like hated. We have all these moderate politicians in our area that serve our area, and so when we would cover what the moderate politicians say, they would say, well, you guys are in the bag of the moderate, and just like beat us up. Yeah, but like, you know, these are the elected officials, like, who else are we going to cover? None of those people paid, right? Like, like they loved the entertainment of like beating us up in Facebook, but it's not worth $5.95 a month to them. So like the trolls disappeared. Like literally, like the 5 or 6 like just vitriolic jerks that were still like operating down there, just like gone. And so like it's actually like improved the tenor of the discussions in the comment section and around a lot of stuff. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are you still projecting more growth than, or you think you peaked out as far as goes?
I think, I mean, yeah, David and I were just talking about this beforehand. I think like in 2 years we could probably hit like 3,000. I also think it's like just normative. It's going to get normal for people. Like everybody is. I don't know. I hope you all have figured out a business model where you don't have to make this decision. But if you're anything like us, you will probably reach a threshold where it's going to come time to either jump or get out of the game. And I think as more and more people get used to it, in whatever form, we're gonna. I mean, we've got 150,000 people in our area right now, right? So like 10,000 subscriptions eventually. I don't know if that's possible.
Where are you at now?
1350. After 6 months, we're at 1350.
And we're going to focus more on.
We haven't done anything.
Focus more on what?
Building subscriptions. And I'm hoping to kind of make it something where our community, you know, they hold each other accountable for, okay, do we want to keep this local news source? We've got to start subscribing.
And do you think that focusing more on building subscriptions will take away from focusing on time selling ads?
That's the hope, is that we can, you know, get our subscriptions to rise so that, yeah, we won't have to be doing any more work necessarily, and we will be building more revenue.
And we have our track, our main app, you know, we've got 7 or 8 main advertisers who've been with us for 5 years now who buy up all the big stuff. And like, yeah, we definitely still have to work to like get it fully fleshed out. But I mean, we're shooting for like 10 to 12,000 in display ads a month this year, or sorry, for 2018. Whereas before we were trying to figure out how to wring 16 or 17 or 18 out of it, and it just wasn't happening.
You just provide like a randomly generated stack of advertising down one rail?
They're differentiated slots, so we have 2 really big prominent visual ones at the top that are like a lot more expensive than everything else. We have, you know, Facebook powered ads in the block under that, static, you know, medium rectangles under that, some kind of in between stories kind of placements, things like that.
Do you offer an ad-free subscription service or, you know, experience?
Not yet, no. I mean, there's like we said, I mean, we were very much like in the like digging out of a hole phase here. We're sort of just getting to the point now where we've got resources and bandwidth to think about, okay, what could we be doing? How could we be changing marketing to get more subscribers, all that kind of stuff.
So you scaled back the area that you're trying to serve?
the original site, this is a little confusing. The original site, we actually have expanded coverage. Now I've got people covering these 2 cities in the school district that I wasn't covering before. But we closed the second site that was covering a second school district. So we're down to 1 site, but in the one original site, we're kind of creeping out to the west a little more.
And your service area population now?
About 150,000.
How many reporters?
Me. and like 8 stringers who are each assigned to a city to like go to city council meetings. But I'm the only full-time editorial person. Yeah.
You're in a rural area?
No.
Not in a rural.
It's
Misleading.
it's
But I am. And
It's-
I think of Kansas, I think of rural.
everybody
Kansas
does.
City.
Yeah, but we're in Kansas City, Missouri, basically.
So you don't have any worry about access to high school internet?
Oh no. It's we got Google. We were the first Google Fiber community actually. So.
Lucky you.
Silicon
Yeah.
Prairie.
Yeah. How about in the backside?
Would you say the fact that you guys were free for 5-6 years leading up to enacting the paywall was in part successful at paywall because you're able to establish value to the future? So if you had just started with the paywall from day one, you probably wouldn't have had the success you did? Or?
We might have, although I think like the parameters we would have set would have been totally different. It would have been $10. You'd have gotten 10 page views a month for free, so that we could like really increase exposure to people. But like I think we could have done it a year earlier, maybe, or like maybe 2 years earlier. But I'm glad we had, in hindsight, I'm glad we had the full 7 years to like build up that. We have a lot of goodwill. Like I'm immodest about saying that, but like everywhere we go, people are like, thank you. This like we needed this. Nobody's been covering us for 6 years. We're
People who
just really
aren't
happy with
paying don't see. They see some big corporation, maybe like a lot of you guys, where they don't put a face to the, they don't see like there's this family behind this doing this site, and they need to make a living. Like the ones who are really against it are like, oh, they're,
Sold out.
Yeah.
that. David.
I was wondering, have you ever thought about charging like a per article fee for someone who doesn't want to pay monthly?
Yeah, although that Ben Thompson article gets into why that could be perilous. It's totally, if it's reproducible, if it's something anybody can kind of reproduce, it doesn't have any real value. And so, okay, maybe I'll like set up something where I pay 10 cents for every article I click or whatever. But I guess the message I'm trying to deliver to people is you're paying me to go out and like produce this stuff. So anyway, we're done. Yep. All right, Jesus, do you have one last question?
I just, on people who have been subscribing on a monthly basis, have you been able to find out if they're continuing or is it much churn?
It's hard. It's kind of hard to tell because the way Pigeon has it set up, if somebody's card gets declined, so they don't have enough money in the account, or they've changed cards or whatever, it'll try to charge the card 3 times and it just automatically cancels the account. So that shows as a lost subscription. But if they come back on, that shows as a new subscription. So it's been really hard for me to tell what our actual churn rate is. Pigeon's good, but it's got a few issues, and that's kind of one of them. So, the last question.
In regards to churn, so a lot of news companies who have paywalls, like you just started one where you're offering an introductory price. You said what, 99 cents per month?
Yeah, but that was a deal that was only open for a week. So you had to use the coupon code for a week.
So
that week.
That's that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of publishers who have paywalls do that. They like to discount. I have a background in restaurants, and when we ran a chain of restaurants, our policy was we never discount because then you're lowering the perceived value of your product. So what we did value add. In other words, you say, well, you're still paying the same price, but we're here to give you something in addition to.
Yeah.
Have you considered that? Like,
I hadn't. I mean, I think that's probably a smarter approach. So, I mean, we did get some, when we did that deal for 1 week, we got some pushback from people saying, like, well, am I still paying $5 a month or whatever? Like, well, you've got access for the past 4 months. I'm just saying, like, hey, if you haven't subscribed, try it out for a month for 99 cents and you go after that. In my head, we're only going to do that like once or twice a year and for like a very short period, because I don't ever want to get people trained to like, I just have to sit around for another 2 weeks and then it'll be another deal. So anyway, I'm happy to talk to anybody offline. Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, yes. Very well.